You're listening to the No Bullshit Vegan Podcast, episode 151. Today, I'm sharing with you a few thoughts on my birthday and a presentation I gave recently at a health expo about veganism and strength training. Hopefully, it'll be a great place to start if you're new to either veganism or strength training, or both. And if you're not new to these worlds, it'll be a good refresher to make sure you've nailed the fundamentals.
Welcome to the No Bullshit Vegan Podcast. Myth-busting and evidence-based advice to help you kick butt with your health and fitness on a vegan diet. Here's your host, Karina Inkster.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm Karina, your go-to no BS vegan fitness and nutrition coach. I happen to be recording this the day after my 37th birthday. So today's June 14th and June 13th is my birthday. So I thought I would throw in a few birthday adjacent comments before I share with you some vegan nutrition and strength training intel. Now, if you're in the gift giving or the birthday celebration mood, I do have a birthday week request for you, because birthday weeks are totally my thing, by the way. I would love it, if you haven't already, if you could leave a star rating and a short review of this show on your podcast listening app of choice. I really love hearing from listeners and seeing reviews come in from all corners of the world, and it's the best way for us to get this show in front of new listeners. So my birthday request is head to the reviews section of your podcast app and then send in a short couple of sentences. Thanks so much. I'm fairly ambivalent about birthdays, to be honest, so I don't have any getting older wisdom or deep reflections about the past year or anything like that. But I did want to share one thing. So for years and years, what I used to do on my birthday was set annual goals. And a lot of folks do this in January for the year, but I always used to do this in June for my birthday. Personal goals, business goals. Looking back, for example, I can see that in 2012, my business goal for that year into 2013 was to sign a book deal for my first book, which I ended up doing in 2013. By the way, after sending out close to 70 query letters to literary agents, getting one acceptance, and then having her find a publisher. Anyway, a few years ago, I changed my stance on goal setting. I wrote an article called Why You Should Think Twice About Making New Year's Resolutions and What to Do Instead. And I included things like goals reduce the happiness you feel right now, goals are limiting, and we feel bad about ourselves when we don't achieve a certain goal, even if we've made immense progress. And then I read James Clear's Atomic Habits soon after it came out in 2018, and it, by the way, remains one of my all-time favorite books. So he writes, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress." And then in 2020, I read Stephen Shapiro's book, Goal-Free Living, where he writes, "Achieving your goals does not mean you will achieve happiness." Very important point. And goals are life's cookbook, recipes for predictable results. This can be very handy, but it can also be limiting. So his example is people who are detached from fitting into a size 4 dress are more likely to lose weight because they won't be overly discouraged by a lack of progress and can take pleasure in their eating habits. Now, the weight loss example here might be a little problematic, but the concept is legit. If you set a very specific fitness or health goal and make that your focus, you're then deprioritizing the process. But if you make the process your focus, somewhat ironically, you're more likely to see results toward your goal. Just a few days ago, I saw an excellent post by someone in my industry that I look up to, Jonathan Goodman, and he writes the following: "Goals are binary. You achieve them or you don't. Systems are fluid. They anticipate that things will go wrong because in the short term, things will always go wrong. If you're in business, your goal might be to make more money. Your system might be to have a minimum of 5 sales conversations a day. Whether or not you make a sale that day isn't as important as performing the calls, because if you perform the calls, the sales will come. If you're in fitness, your goal might be to get in shape. Your system might be as simple as putting your workout clothing on. Whether or not you work out that day isn't as important as putting your clothing on, because most days, if you put your workout clothes on, you're going to exercise. But if you don't, that's fine, because some days you won't be feeling it. Systems over goals, process over outcome. Then sales call by sales call, rep by rep, word by word, you'll get better. And over time, getting better provides more enjoyment than getting there. Because the moment you get there, it becomes the new here, and there will be a new there anyway. So, this is all a very long way of telling you that I no longer set goals on my birthday every year. I do a little bit of business planning with a fellow coach friend every January to plan out major projects and intentions for the year, but that's pretty much it. So for my birthday, I did a workout with my friend Silvana that involved 37 reps of each of our strength moves, because I turned 37, of course. Then a hike and a lake swim with my friend Vanessa, and dinner with my husband and parents and a relative who's visiting from England. And I also fit in some music time. For new listeners, by the way, who don't know, I play and perform accordion, piano, and didgeridoo. And I also baked and ate a metric shit ton of cinnamon rolls. So that's a pretty legit way to spend a birthday, I would say. So recently I was asked to create a presentation for the 9th Annual Yoga Festival and Health Expo, based in Vancouver, but with a prominent online component. I was part of a panel discussion that ended up having 1,700 viewers tune in. And last week I recorded a presentation on vegan nutrition and strength training that they showed at this event. So this presentation covers the basics of strength training, veganism for active folks, a few nutrients vegan should pay special attention to, and of course, everyone's favorite topic, protein. So you can use this as a jumping off point if you're new to veganism or strength training. And if you're already a long-term pro, use it to make sure you've covered the fundamentals. Cue the presentation. I'm Karina Inkster, but my clients call me Coach K. And I'm the author of 5 books. I host the No BS Vegan podcast, which is available on all podcasting platforms and also syndicated on radio in my city. And I love chin-ups. I love dark chocolate. And my coaching team and I work with our clients all over the world. It's completely online, creating and holding them accountable to their strength training programs and making sure that their plant-based nutrition is supporting their training, their physique, and their health goals. So today I'm going to be speaking to you about veganism and strength training. How do you make sure that you're fueling your workouts properly? Are there any nutrients that active vegans need to pay special attention to? And the spoiler here, of course, is yes, there are. And the never-ending question, where do you get your protein? But first, I wanted to share a little bit of a backstory, kind of my vegan origin story, I guess. So in 1997, at the age of 11, I decided to become vegetarian. Now, this was entirely for ethical reasons, wanting to avoid having animals killed for my consumption. And you also need to remember that this was the age way before Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or TikTok. I mean, my household at that point didn't even have internet access. So that's not an excuse, but it's one of the reasons that it took me 5 years to realize that there's no moral distinction between the meat, dairy, and egg industries. They're all the same. They're one and the same. They support each other. And these days, of course, it's really easy to access information in this realm, like video footage and interviews, you name it. Anyways, it took me a while to figure that out. But once I did, I went vegan immediately. And I recently celebrated my 20th vegan anniversary. And I'm obviously never going to look back. This is a lifestyle for me. So for me, being vegan means living in a way that aligns with my values. And that in itself, I think, is very important for overall mental well-being. Over the years, I've expanded my motivations for being vegan to include our environment and curbing climate change, increasing athletic performance, overall health, a whole bunch of other reasons. But it always comes back to a foundation of compassion for animals and fellow humans and living, not just eating, but living in a way that aligns with my values. So let's talk about strength training. Just so we're all on the same page about what strength training is, it's also called resistance training, by the way. It's one of the most effective ways of improving your body composition, preventing injuries, increasing your bone density, revving up your metabolism, improving your day-to-day functioning. The list goes on. So strength training is a fairly broad term that refers to any type of exercise that uses some form of resistance to strengthen and build your muscles. So we can create this resistance by using dumbbells, barbells, weight and cable machines at the gym, kettlebells, medicine balls, your own body weight, resistance bands. There's a lot of different options. So you don't have to feel like you need to go to a gym in order to strength train. There's a lot of options. Now, most government and health organizations recommend a minimum of 2 days per week of strength training for at least half an hour, working all your major muscle groups every time. So if you have more days available to train, that's better. But as a minimum to see health benefits, all these things I listed before, like bone density and increasing strength, 2 days a week of about 30 minutes, making sure you train all your muscle groups, is enough to see a lot of benefits. So when I say all your major muscle groups, I want to share the 6 fundamental strength training movements that you should include in your workouts. You can include more than these, but a lot of people miss some of these 6 fundamental moves. And I call them movement patterns because there are a lot of different exercises that you can do under each of these umbrellas. So really briefly, the first movement pattern that you want to include in your strength training is a squat. So you can do that with a barbell, you can do a goblet squat with a dumbbell, you can use a resistance band. There's tons of options. You can do a body weight squat, but some form of squat is a fundamental strength training move that you want to include in your training week. Then we have a hinge, which is basically a deadlift. So you can do a single leg version, you can do a barbell deadlift, you can do a resistance band hip hinge, you can do a kickstand deadlift. Whatever you do, you want a deadlift. This is, of course, barring any sort of injury you're working around or advice from a physical therapist, for example, that says you shouldn't do a particular move. These are just generalized to the population. The third move is a lunge. So you can do a walking lunge. You can use dumbbells, kettlebells, resistance bands, some random household object you find like a water bottle. You can do a body weight reverse lunge. There's tons of options, but splitting your feet, so one is in front and one is behind, is a very important movement pattern to work, not just strength, but also stability and balance. Then we have an upper body push movement. So these are things that train your chest, a little bit of your shoulders, and your triceps. So moves like bench press, overhead presses, resistance band chest presses, push-ups, anything that uses your pecs in a pushing motion is super important. And then the reverse of that is a pull. So now you're using your back and all of your postural muscles and a little bit of your biceps. So you want to make sure you're doing some kind of a row, resistance band, dumbbell, kettlebell, barbell. You can do a lat pull down. There's a face pull move that's for your rear delts, which is really high up in your back. You can do a seated row, pull-ups and chin-ups, some of my favorite moves ever, cable rows. Options are endless. Now, the last move is one that most folks leave out of their programs, which is not a good call. Usually the only people I see who are doing this move are folks who have a coach and are working in a gym setting, because generally the coaches know what they're doing, right? So this is a weighted carry. So basically what this means is picking up a heavy object or 2 heavy objects, one in each hand, and bracing your core, using all your upper body muscles to carry these things and taking them for a walk. So you can do a 1-arm carry, so you're using your abs to stabilize. You can do kettlebells. The general goal with carries, by the way, is to be able to carry your own body weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds, for example, you want to use 100 pounds in each hand. So a total of 200 pounds for a weighted carry. But these moves give you an idea of how your workouts should be structured in order to give you the health benefits like bone density, muscle gain, strength gain, increased metabolism, all those awesome things. So moving on, I want to talk about veganism and athletic performance. And I have some input from Susan Levin. So she's a registered dietitian and the director of nutrition education for the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, which is a completely plant-based organization, by the way. And she contributed to my book, The Vegan Athlete, which is actually the updated edition of my very first book, Vegan Vitality. So she technically contributed to two of my books, but I'm spotlighting The Vegan Athlete because it's more recent. She's been on the podcast as well, and she's written for my website. But here's what she says. Susan writes, I think a lot of athletes approach training as a time to teach the body how to get faster or stronger through repetition of a specific exercise. What training really is a time to figure out how the body excels at a particular event. That means, among other things, figuring out how to fuel for optimal performance. Many professional athletes have realized, through trial and error, that a vegan diet allows them to train more often because of the shorter recovery time needed. There are several theories as to why a vegan diet would be better than other diets. Training is actually a stress on the body and its immune function. A vegan diet full of fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes provides a clear immune boost with its high antioxidant content and avoidance of pro-inflammatory products found in meat and dairy. This immune boost could be what allows vegan athletes to train and recover in rapid succession. So there's more research that we need here, but what's coming out these days and anecdotal evidence is showing that a vegan diet actually has performance enhancing properties for athletes. So if you're an active person and you're plant-based, what are some things that you might need to pay special attention to? Well, there are two things that usually come to mind for me. And the first one is overall food volume. So whole plant-based foods are typically very nutrient dense and not very calorie dense when you're comparing them to animal foods. Like you can eat a salad, basically the size of your torso, for only a few hundred calories. Now, to fuel a really active lifestyle, you'll need to ensure that you're consuming enough calories for your specific goals and for your training. And you might notice that on a vegan diet, you need to eat a larger volume of food to get the same number of calories you used to get as an omnivore. So, losing weight unintentionally doesn't happen that often because a lot of people actually do go vegan to lose weight, which I wouldn't recommend, by the way. I would go vegan for ethical reasons and environmental reasons, not as a weight loss diet. But sometimes really active people who go vegan will lose weight unintentionally because, again, whole plant-based foods are really nutrient dense, but typically not as calorie dense as animal products. So if you're super active, you got to keep in mind you'll probably need to eat a lot more food when it comes to volume. But if you're concerned about losing weight or, changing body composition unintentionally, it would help to track your calories for the first few weeks if you're a new vegan. So if you're just making the transition, use an app like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal, and you can track your overall intake of food to make sure that you're hitting your targets. Now, there are a few extra important nutrients that vegans probably should pay attention to. You know this already, that a really well-planned, mostly whole foods, entirely plant-based diet is extremely beneficial to our health. A few nutrients, though, that are found abundantly in animal-based foods may need special attention if you're vegan, just to make sure you're consuming enough of them. And you want to make sure that you're not just consuming enough, but also absorbing enough of the nutrients you need. So in that arena, I would recommend that you get regular blood tests, at least annually. And you can check for things like B12 and zinc and iron and vitamin D. And if it turns out you're low in any of these, which by the way is also really common in non-vegans, then you can work with your healthcare provider on supplementation. So the first nutrient I want to address is iron. It is necessary for producing red blood cells, and it carries oxygen throughout the body. So it's super important. And it's a little more difficult for the body to absorb plant-based sources of iron, which is not inherently a problem. You just need to make sure that you're getting a lot of iron-rich foods in your diet, like soy products, dried apricots, fortified grain products, blackstrap molasses, beans, lentils, artichokes. There's lots of options. Now, B12 is next. My coaching team and I always say, Every vegan should take a B12 supplement. Non-negotiable. If you're vegan, take B12. So you can take a sublingual pill or you can take a liquid form. B12 is produced by bacteria. So in centuries past, we would have gotten our B12 from soil particles on our food, but that's not the case anymore. And I also want to point out, by the way, the reason animal products contain B12 is because those animals themselves were given B12 supplements, not because there's B12 inherent in meat and eggs or other animal products. The animals themselves were supplemented. So B12 is crucial for keeping blood and nerve cells healthy, and it also helps the body to use fats. And B12 deficiency is extremely dangerous and it can result in nerve damage. So don't take any chances. Just take your B12 supplement. And don't worry about taking too much, by the way, because your body will just excrete what it doesn't need. Now, in addition to your supplement, really good sources of this vitamin include nutritional yeast, fortified non-dairy milks like soy and almond, and fortified meat alternatives. Next, we have calcium, which we all know is necessary for healthy bones, and it also helps our muscles to contract. So plant-based sources of calcium include almonds, tahini, tofu, figs, collard greens, and fortified non-dairy beverages, many of which, by the way, have more calcium than cow's milk. Now, unlike nutrients like B12 or iron or vitamin D, you can't measure your body's calcium levels via blood work. So you can't get a blood test and see how you're doing in terms of calcium. So to ensure you're getting enough calcium, track your food for at least a few days using an app like MyFitnessPal, and you'll get a general sense of how much calcium you're taking in. Now, lastly, another nutrient I want to bring to your attention is omega-3 fatty acids, which is probably something you hear about a lot in the vegan world. They are crucial for brain function. They reduce inflammation, and they might help to prevent heart disease. Plant foods rich in omega-3s include flaxseed oil and ground flaxseed, walnuts, sacha inchi seeds, chia seeds, and hemp hearts. Now, you probably know that fish oil is a good source of omega-3s, but did you know that the omega-3 in fish comes from the algae they eat? So why not get your nutrition straight from the source? You can get an algal DHA oil. DHA is a type of omega-3 fatty acid, and you can use that as a supplement. Research is still ongoing, so there's no consensus here on an exact daily dosage, but you can follow the manufacturer's instructions or check with your healthcare provider. Now, what if you want to make some serious muscle gains on a plant-based diet? It's not really that different from gaining muscle on a non-plant-based diet. What's most important is that you're eating a diet of primarily whole foods, taking in a large variety of different foods, and consuming the calories you need. Protein is very important if you strength train regularly, and this is whether you're vegan or not. This is not a vegan-only issue. But we really don't need to obsess about it like the average gym bro will have us believe. You need to think about it, but we don't have to go overboard with it. And we'll get into a little bit more of the protein details shortly. Now, on the other hand, what if you want to lose fat? So much like gaining muscle on a vegan diet, losing fat on a vegan diet is not much different from losing fat on a non-vegan diet. You need to be in a calorie deficit in order to lose fat. And the good news for you is that a lot of vegan foods, as mentioned before, are very nutrient dense, but not very calorie dense. So if you're loading up on giant salads, fresh veggies, fruit, whole grains, beans, lentils, tofu, etc., you could fairly easily put yourself into a calorie deficit. So let's talk about the protein piece. Everyone who's been vegan for more than 4 minutes has heard, but where do you get your protein from? And the first piece of this protein puzzle is you might not actually need as much protein as you think. And the second and third pieces are protein density and variety. If you strength train, you do need to make sure that you're eating protein dense foods like seitan, tofu, tempeh, high protein pastas, textured vegetable protein, etc. And feel free to experiment with plant-based protein powders, but do keep variety in mind. You want to make sure that you're getting your amino acids from a lot of different foods, not just getting all your protein from one source. So all foods contain amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein. And most foods contain at least some ready-made protein. Now, there's no one-size-fits-all recommendation like there is for iron or B12 or zinc for how much protein we need every day. And your protein needs will depend on things like your body weight, your overall activity level, and the type of training you do. Really active people, especially those who strength train, are going to require much higher protein intakes than sedentary people. So there's a myth out there that you might have heard, especially in the vegan world, that goes, well, if you eat enough calories, you will automatically get enough protein. And it's something I hear a lot in the vegan world. And for sedentary people, this might be accurate. But if you strength train, you do need to pay special attention to your protein intake. So if you're inactive, you need 0.8 grams of protein per kilo of body weight per day. For a 150-pound person, for example, that works out to 54 grams of protein a day. Pretty easy to get. You can have tofu scramble for breakfast, a burrito for lunch, and dry roasted edamame as a snack, and you've already nailed your protein goal for the day, even before having dinner. Now, if you strength train regularly, you will, of course, need more protein, and most recommendations here are between 1.8 and 2.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight per day, and that depends on the intensity of your training. So if you're a 150-pound strength athlete, you'll need between 122 and 170 grams of protein per day. So a day's worth of protein for this athlete might include tofu scramble with seitan strips for breakfast, a smoothie with hemp hearts, chia seeds, and flax seeds and protein powder for a snack, edamame pasta with tomato sauce for lunch, and a burrito for dinner. Now, if you want to know exactly how much protein you need, we have a protein calculator on our website, karinainkster.com/protein calculator, and you just put in your variables and it'll show you how many grams of protein you need every day. So a couple of really excellent plant-based sources of protein include edamame, soybeans, of course, either steamed or dry roasted, seitan, my current favorite, fava bean tofu. So it's the exact same method of making tofu, except it's made with fava beans instead of soybeans. And it has over 60 grams of protein in one small block. It's absolutely amazing. Beans, lentils, and nuts, of course, seeds, non-dairy milks, tofu, tempeh, nutritional yeast. The list is endless. So in summary, a vegan diet may actually enhance athletic performance, but we do need more longitudinal research here. If you're an active vegan, you do need to pay attention to your overall food volume, as well as a few specific nutrients like B12 and iron. And if you strength train and or have body composition goals, you need to think about protein, but you don't need to worry about protein. Thank you so much for your attention, and I would love to connect with you. So you can go to karinainkster.com for all things vegan strength training and to ask me questions or to get in touch. My team and I have a ton of free resources, including a free ebook on strength training and nutrition. And that was to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of my podcast. We also have the vegan protein calculator that I mentioned, a vegan specific portion guide, and a ton of articles and podcast episodes. Thanks again. Hope you enjoyed that veganism and strength training primer. Head to our show notes at nobullshitvegan.com/151 to connect with me, and thank you for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to the No Bullshit Vegan podcast at nobullshitvegan.com.